The Daily Ramble on Claret and Booze. I got there eventually. Sorry about that. Minor delay. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Daily Ramble here on Claret and Booze. I don't usually do this on StreamYard, and last week StreamYard punished me for it. If you remember, I was blacked out completely. So my name's Gary, and I'm welcoming again John Kamei. Oh, I said it right,
You
Casey.
did? Yeah.
To
Nice
the past.
to see you, Gary, this time.
Always nice to see me, John. Obviously.
It's always nice to be seen. But yeah, I was slightly off-putting last week just talking to a black space. But
it was a
I think we
good
managed it.
performance because considering you couldn't actually see me at all, it was your first time on YouTube as well. You're a natural, John. You're a natural. So so we've got a very interesting feature packed show for you today. We're going to talk about later on. We're going to talk about the Brazilian inquiry that's going on apparently today. So just going to dive into that a little bit later. We're also going to discuss our glorious sponsors, Betway, and the likely relationship they have to West Ham now. And we're going to talk about that, Betway, the company, a bit. But first of all, let's focus on the potential outcomes of the FA tribunal. So first of all, John, is spot fixing a criminal offence? And do you think there is a chance that Paqueta will kind of go to jail maybe if found guilty?
On the face of it, spot fixing would be a criminal offence if it's done with the intention to sort of manipulate the betting markets and with the intention of individuals to profit from it. That will be covered by the Fraud Act. It's happened before. I don't know if we got around to this last time, but back in 2010, Lord's Test match, England against Pakistan, there was a young Pakistani fast bowler called Mohammed Amir who really was the victim of all of this. He was bowling these really bizarre no balls. I mean, his front foot was landing about 4 or 5 feet down the pitch. It was really obvious that something odd was going on. And whether they had a tip off prior to this or not, I don't know. But he and the captain, who was Salman Butt, his name was, and some other individuals were arrested as a result of a News of the World sting. One of the few occasions when the News of the World actually acted in the public interest, Gary.
Very true, very true. But you said he was the victim. Why is that?
Well, I mean, I'm being sort of human and sympathetic. I mean, he was a 19-year-old, new to the Pakistan setup, very good player. Thankfully, after he served a prison sentence, I think he did 18 months.
Wow.
He was, and his ban expired. He was brought back into the fold, and I'm not sure if he's still in the side, but he was certainly in the last Pakistan touring team here. I'm a bit of a cricket fan, Gary, as well as West Ham fan. And he and his fellow co-conspirators were charged with essentially with conspiring to cheat the bookmakers and with receiving payment for doing so. But this, before anybody gets hysterical about this, this was an international conspiracy that involved almost certainly a great deal of money indeed. And was very different to what we're dealing with here, which, if the Sun is to be believed, and again, I think I expressed my opinions about rumors and leaks and stuff in our last installment. I don't know if you saw this, but there was a map of Paqueta Island showing the locations where all these, funny bets were being laid, from the value of about £4 or £7 up to £400. Mohammed Amir and Salman Butt were involved in something far more sinister, which involved cheating betting companies, mainly in the subcontinent. So totally different scale.
And they were actually paid for their time, were they?
They were, and Mohammed Amir was charged with taking payments as well.
Right.
All right. Now, one very important point to make here. And I know we're going to try and make this video a little bit less legal technical than it was last time, but some details I should get out of the way. The police were onto this immediately. Arrests were made. As I recall, because I do remember when this happened, very shortly after the test ended. This, of course, has been looked at purely and simply as a disciplinary issue. And we can discuss whether or not Lucas Paqueta has potentially committed a criminal offence in due course. But there is no precedent in football, in the Premier League, I should emphasise, in the Premier League, for anybody being arrested, charged, prosecuted, convicted for something like this. The Crown Prosecution Service would need a great deal of evidence. This, I emphasise, is a disciplinary issue.
So criminal is, you said last time, it's a different bar you've got to reach for a criminal prosecution to what it is for a tribunal.
Yeah, as we said last time, in order to in order for prosecution to get underway, in order for a suspect to actually be charged with a criminal offence, he's got to pass a test which the CPS apply themselves internally, which is, do we feel that on the evidence we've got, there's a realistic chance of a conviction?
Yeah.
Now, conviction means proving beyond reasonable doubt. Disciplinary tribunals such as this go on that much more watered down, easier to prove standard of balance of probabilities.
Right.
So the issues that let's just look at worst case scenario, and I emphasize two things. Number one, these are only allegations, and number two, we are right now playing devil's advocate. This is not speculation. This is just positing a scenario, right?
Yes.
Let's for one moment, for argument's sake, suggest that the Crown Prosecution Service were interested in prosecuting Lucas Paqueta in the in the wake, as it were, of a guilty finding from the FA.
Yeah.
Right. Let's just say the CPS then wanted to have a look at that. Well, the evidence that they've got, we talked last time, coincidence, I don't think would be enough even to satisfy the FA tribunal, let alone anything more serious. Let's suppose that there is evidence linking, because they'd need this, linking Lucas Paqueta to the manipulation of the markets.
Yes.
So there'd have to be some evidence of some communication. Yeah. I don't think anyone's going to suggest he was financially profiting from it.
No.
Very different to the Almere situation. But let's just, for argument's sake, suggest that it's coincidence plus some evidence of collusion, if you like. Yeah. Well, the CPS are going to ask themselves, I think, essentially two things to start with. Number one, even with that evidence, do we, the CPS, think that that will give us the reasonable chance of a conviction? Right. What they've got to prove is a much higher standard.
Yeah.
And again, we don't know what the evidence is, so they would need pretty strong evidence to even want to touch this.
Yes.
The second question is this, Gary. I'll just finish this bit, right? Even if they felt that there was some what we call prima facie evidence, they would then have to ask themselves this question: would Lucas Paqueta get a fair trial? Is it in the public interest to actually prosecute this?
Because you'd have to have been living under a stone if you haven't seen the case.
Absolutely.
Right.
And absolutely. So if he's condemned, as he already has been by all the tabloids, because I mean they're very careful that he denies allegations. These are allegations, blah blah blah. But let's be honest. I mean, all of the tabloids have been down on him like a ton of bricks. So have various media outlets we needn't name who broadcast nationally, right?
Yeah,
you know who we're talking about. And so the CPS may consider internally whether it's even worth running a trial like that in circumstances where he's been hung, drawn, quartered, convicted by all and sundry. How are you going to get a jury to approach this case with an independent mind? And even if they did go ahead with it, defense counsel would be absolutely on this right from the start. In summary, I believe that the prospect of this actually going to a criminal trial in this country, the prospects are as good as negligible.
Okay, did a CPS take into account the punishment that's already been meted out? So if he lost his career, for instance,
No,
no, so that doesn't matter.
no, that wouldn't be a relevant consideration. I mean, it technically speaking, no. I mean, look, behind closed doors, in terms of what they discuss, in terms of public interest, it might be a consideration. But
Right.
technically, the law is the law. Has he broken the law? Have we got the evidence? Can we, if we have the evidence, secure a fair trial that isn't going to get appealed?
Yeah.
Those are the three criteria that the CPS will predominantly be looking at. But you're right. I mean, if someone's been ruined
Yeah.
and internationally, I mean, humiliated in global football,
Oh yeah.
it off the record, it might be a consideration, but legally speaking, no.
Right. So what's West Ham's position? So if he is found guilty by the FA, so now we're not talking about the criminal prosecution, which might not happen, probably won't happen. Let's talk about West Ham's position. If he's found guilty, what do West Ham do? What are their options?
Well, if he is found guilty, and I'm still clinging to the hope that there is perhaps less to this than the media want to present.
Oh, me too.
If he is found guilty, then inevitably he will be in breach of contract. None of us have sight of players' contracts, but it goes without saying that it's implicit within a contract that you shouldn't do anything detrimental to the reputation of the club, etc. Much less get involved with anything that resembles spot fixing. It'd be a sackable offence.
It's also part of the FA rules, like we saw last time as well, isn't it? And he should be, the contract no doubt says that he has to comply with all of the FA rules.
Yeah. So it would be implicit in his contractual terms. I'm not a contract lawyer or an employment lawyer, but it's common sense. I mean, that they would be implicit within his terms of contract and probably explicit. So this is a grey area, because I think a lot that would depend. We talked last time about mitigating circumstances. We talked last time about the discretion that the FA have in terms of imposing bans.
Yeah.
We talked last time about, do you remember that alleged leak? The FA want 10 years, which is crap, absolute rubbish. Yeah. It's the three on the panel that decide the punishment, not the FA.
Yeah.
Well, let's because West Ham have got to adopt they've got to tread carefully, and they've got to be very flexible. Let's say that he's found guilty on fairly weighty evidence, but he's only banned for a year. West Ham might think, well, we'll err on the side of flexibility and generosity, and we'll keep him on.
Yeah.
And we'll welcome him back in a year, provided he stays fit. Because at the end of the day, of course, taking a pragmatic approach, to West Ham, he's a massive investment. And if they were to sack him, that investment goes out the window. If they sack him, they stop paying his wages, 150 grand a week or whatever, but they won't get a penny back on the resale value. And this is where, one thing I detest in transfers is this, what's that clause called? My brain's gone.
The buyout clause.
The buyout clauses.
Yeah.
Well, West Ham would hopefully be recouping 85 million on him.
Yes.
So if they were to sack him, they're going to forego that. Now, were they to sack him, they could follow what Chelsea did in about 2006 with Adrian Mutu, which is to sack him and sue him. They sued Mutu for about 15 million, which is what they paid for him.
Yes.
And that was recently, I think, about 5 or 6 years ago. It was upheld in the federal court in Switzerland, of all places. Mutu's still got to pay that money back.
Wow.
West Ham could sue him, and in order, it's important to stress that in order to sue someone, you're going for damages. The damages have to be a quantifiable amount based on what the employer, has lost.
Yeah.
Well, in their case, it's losing the value of a player for what's he got, 2 years on his contract left?
I think they've already paid 2 installments of his transfer fee, and they've still got 1 installment to pay. I think that's this summer. because it's usually structured over 3 years, right? So they probably still owe Leon about 10 million, I would imagine.
Well, so they would start by suing all potential, but arguably they could, if they've got to pay that to Leon, which they would have to, they would go after Lucas Paqueta for that 10 million. They would also go after him. They try to quantify the loss of value over the remaining 2 or 3 years of his contract, and they would want to examine the loss of value in terms of the sell-on fee.
They couldn't sue him for the wages that he's already earned, could they? Because he's carried out his duties, in some instances, well above and beyond what we expected. I mean, for instance, setting up the goal that won the cup final. You can't actually say, "Oh, surely they couldn't ask for those wages back for the last 2 years that he's been here," could they?
I wouldn't have thought so, but I'm guessing. I think that it's probably always sensible to look at what is finite, and what is finite and what is definite is that effectively they've just lost £85 million with the sell-on clause.
Yeah.
And I think we've all been resigned to losing him, haven't we? And all of the sort of mood music coming out of Manchester City and elsewhere was that this was a done deal. He'd agreed personal terms. So I think rather than try to quantify loss in terms of what he's already been paid and the value of that he would have been to the club over the remaining 2 or 3 years of his contract, I think they would say, no, here's the documentation. Here is evidence, all the negotiations we'd had with City. It was a done deal. This is what we were going to get. And that's what they would try and sue him for. Although, of course, the reality is Lucas Paqueta hasn't got 85 billion quid.
No, he'll be a footballer with very rich taste, living to his means, I would imagine.
Yeah. They'd probably try to sort of cut that down to a more realistic and appropriate figure.
Yeah.
However, there's a flip side to that coin, which is this: what if, having been convicted by the FA and not having been hit with a terribly long ban, let's say it's a year, 18 months tops.
Yeah.
What do West Ham do there? Because he would likely become available to them again in about 18 months.
Yeah.
What if even West Ham felt that the evidence upon which he was convicted by the FA wasn't as strong as it could have been?
Yeah, yeah.
What if there lies potentially some kind of appeal to the Court for Arbitration of Sport? Or, West Ham were going to have to tread carefully because he is a massive asset to them. And I would have thought their main priority is trying to keep that asset alive rather than going after him.
And the details of the judgment will be made public, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's a really grey area. I mean, there are so many potentialities to this. It's probably barely worth talking about them because they're going to be so speculative. But I would have thought West Ham's number one option would be to look after their financial asset.
I would have thought so.
And they've got to be careful also because we're all familiar with is it Benjamin Mendy, the City fullback, who
was accused of rape, wasn't he?
Well, he was charged with multiple rapes. I mean, the whole story was gruesome and awful, and he was acquitted of all of it. But of course, in the meantime, while he was awaiting trial, Manchester City, very poor judgment, I think, decided to terminate his contract.
Right.
So he's got, I don't know if this has been settled yet, but I know he was suing them for £10 million in lost wages. I think he plays for Lorient now in France, so his career nosedived. Well, the point is this: West Ham have got to be careful because if, for example, Lucas Paqueta is banned on the basis of coincidence, he's going to want to fight this. And if he comes out on top, it might not be for 18 months, 2 or 3 years, but if he does, he will be suing West Ham.
Yeah.
for lost wages. So,
So,
all parties have got to be the FA have got to be, I'm sure the FA have been very careful in their due diligence, their evidence collecting and what have you. I would hope that if they have, for example, found evidence that might undermine their case or support Lucas Paqueta's defence, they will disclose that to him. Lucas Paqueta's got to be very careful when he says he's handed over everything that he could hand over. I hope that's right. I hope he's able to demonstrate that. I hope he's able to demonstrate that if they're accusing him of failing to do so, he can show on the balance of probabilities that he literally could not disclose anything else. He did as much as he could.
yeah.
There are so many grey areas here that each party here has got to be very, very careful as to the steps they take. As I said, FA have got to be very careful in the way that they present their case.
Yeah.
They can't allow Lucas Paqueta away back at them because their reputation's on the line. West Ham have got to be very, very careful as to how they treat their prized asset. Do they back him or sack him?
Yeah.
Has Lucas Paqueta, and will he continue to cooperate in the way that he says he has? I think a lot of people have concluded that this whole saga isn't going to be over till it's over, and that may be some time from now, during which Lucas Paqueta, of course, is still free to play for us.
Yeah. I don't. I did hear last night a rumor that the hearing was planned for the end of August, but I can't find proof of that anywhere.
The hearing end of August.
That's what I was told last night, but it's a questionable source.
Right.
Right. So if that happens though, that's just as it's literally just after the start of the season. So you would have thought I wonder what his attitude would be towards this, because you would have thought with a hearing coming up, he'll be focused on that entirely and working with his lawyers, and wouldn't be focused on football so much. In which case, Lopetegui might not be able to make use of him, or it could be football is the perfect thing for him to do to take his mind off the trial.
Well, do you remember Lee Bowyer?
Yeah,
20 years ago,
Mm.
the trial. Jonathan Woodgate and Michael Dubry.
I remember it well. Yeah.
Because Lee Bowyer's Silk, he's no longer with us, but he had two barristers. I knew them both very, very well.
Yeah.
And he, of course, was acquitted, as they all were. But he had to wait a long time for his trial to come up, and I think that coincided with Leeds' great European or Champions League run.
Yeah.
I think it did. Lee Bowyer played out of his skin. I mean, I think everybody was saying that this guy was on fire. People react in different ways. Lucas Paqueta's got the Copa America.
Yeah.
If the Brazilian FA allow him to play, I mean, you know something.
We're going to come to that later about because there's a lot in that story, a lot more than I thought.
Right. Well, I'm interested to hear about what you've heard.
Yeah.
Who knows how Lucas Paqueta is going to react? All I can imagine. Well, I can't imagine how he must be feeling right now.
Well, I'm still inclined to love the guy, because like you said last time, he is my kind of footballer. That is, I love the artists. I love Trevor Brooking growing up. I love Payet. I love Di Canio, and now we've got Paqueta, who is an artist. He's an artist. He does things. He can pick out a pass with a blindfold on. The guy is supremely talented.
But as a lot of people said on the chat, didn't they? Because we got a lot of comments after last week's show, and they're absolutely right. If you watched every West Ham game and just chalked up the number of horrible fouls that Lucas Paqueta commits, this all feeds into the coincidence point again. He commits a lot of ugly fouls. He's got a I won't say he's got a screw loose, but he's got a nasty edge to him, hasn't
he? He is. Yeah, he's the kind of person, if he played for the opposition, you'd really hate. But it's like he's our bastard kind of thing. It's that sort of thing. I love him. I love that. I love the nasty streak. I really do. The fact that he's a little bit nutty. Those players always tend to do very well at West Ham. Those kind of players. and there's a slight screw loose. There is something wrong there somewhere. But I'm just gonna continue believing until I hear otherwise that he's innocent. It does seem to be an ongoing campaign to condemn him before he's even been heard, and I think what's happening in Brazil is a prime example of that. Let's do first of all, before we move on to that, let's talk about Betway. So Betway are the glorious club sponsors, right? They've been our sponsors since 2015. At the moment, they pay us 12.5 million quid a year. That's since 2018, and before that, they paid us 20.5. If you work out what they've paid us over that period, it comes to about 83 million. Not saying there's any conspiracy theory here, by the way. I'm just saying. We've taken, I mean, courtesy of Betway doing what they've done, we're going to potentially lose out on 85 million. They're very close, those figures, aren't they? In November 2023, Brady stated that we're looking for a new sponsor. Now, I don't know if that was because of the Paqueta situation. I imagine it was, because it was, this happened 3 months earlier. And the betting companies are not being banned from the front of shirts until 2025-26. But Betway is a bit of a mystery to me, or it was a mystery to me until I did some investigation into it to find out who they are. And they're a company that's owned by the Super Group. Describe themselves as the premier online sportsbook operating under a single brand. This is Super Group, offering first-class sports betting and casino entertainment. God, it sounds right up the street for who you'd want on the front of your shirt. So they've got 60 plus brand partnerships across the world. There was one time a couple of years ago where Betway, I can't remember how many Premier League games there are. It's about 400, right? They were quoting this stat in 2021 that their brand had been seen on TV in 221 of those matches, right? Which is quite incredible because it ain't just us they sponsor; they're all over the place. They were a UK company initially. Their HQ is in Malta, so I don't know if they're based in the UK still, but their HQ is in Malta, probably for, I would imagine, efficiency reasons. They employ about 1,900 people worldwide. It's the parent, the holding company is called Super Group, like I said already, registered on the New York Stock Exchange. They appear to be a very, very successful company in terms of, I mean, their share price is it seems like a bargain at the moment. $3.40, $3.50. And you look at their market cap of 1.7 billion and revenues of 1.6 billion, but they're seeing year-on-year growth of like 19%, depending when you look, 90%, 30%. There was in one quarter. Remember that number, by the way. Revenues 1.6 billion in the last financial year. They paid around about 28 to 30 million dollars in tax, right? So there's and only 2% of their revenues come from the South American market, and this is where I think it gets a bit interesting, right? So 2% of their revenues from the South American market. Brazil's only one country in South America. Now, if you take their total staff, you break it down, there's probably 25 people supporting South America, right? And there's probably 5 or 6 in Brazil. So what's happened here? Is this some global, fraud detection system or risk management system they've got going? Or is it somebody in the Brazil office realizing that they're overexposed and suddenly stumbling across why? I mean, it's again, I don't want to invent conspiracy theories because that's not what this show is about. But this is, to me, this is not the sort of company that should be sponsoring football. And you know that the ban in 25-26 is only from the front of shirts. These people and all of their mates in the betting industry will continue to advertise all around the edge of the pitch and get themselves pushed out on the TV.
Gary, when I started going to Upton Park as a season ticket holder, which was in 1993, excuse me, once in a blue moon, because honestly, if I went into a betting shop, I wouldn't know what to do. And I'm not trying to cover myself in moral glory. It's just that betting's never appealed to me. But once in a blue moon, in the East Stand, Upton Park, down the ground floor, there used to be, or first floor, I can't remember. That's right, that scummy little betting shop right at the end, at the North Bank end.
Little pencils.
Yes. But I can remember it was the score, scorers, who's going to score first, win, lose or draw, and that was about it. Now it's, how many corners is Vladimir Sufal going to give away in the first 12 and a half minutes? What colour? What are the odds that someone's going to be wearing pink bootlaces? I mean, it's just gone off. I went to a game once 2 years ago. Took a mate with me. And it was watching his team, and he was just doing this through the game. His eyes glued on his phone. That's how bad it is with a lot of people. And who is feeding that? Sky TV, who've got their own betting company, of course, Sky Bet, Paddy Power, Betway, Bet365,
William Hill, all the lot. And there's about
gamble
6 billion.
Gamble responsibly.
Oh yeah, gamble responsibly. And also Harry Redknapp, one of the dodgiest, slipperiest blokes you're ever likely to come across. He, he does the put a bet on. Oh, by the way, don't gamble too much type advert.
I get that. To me, is worse than showing horrible photographs of the inside of people's lungs on fact packets. It's like we've discharged that's our disclaimer. But we will continue to parasite off the most vulnerable in society. Why do most people bet obsessively? It's because they've got no money.
Absolutely. It targets, it's like the national lottery. It's people at the lower end of society who are desperate for that win to take.
At least the national lottery contributes to the upkeep of our national heritage and the British Olympic team and stuff like that. Where does this money go? How much of it actually is invested, for example, in grassroots football? You tell me, because I don't know.
None. I mean, it looks like it's piped out as equity to shareholders, to be honest.
It's just utterly revolting. And yet, the double look again. I'm not coming down on one side or another with Lucas Paqueta, but the double standards here. I know it's largely the Premier League that is on this rather than the FA, but wouldn't it be nice to watch a game of football on television where you don't have betting rammed down your throat?
Yes, it would.
Every 10 minutes, apart from the 45 minutes of each half of the game. It's and we all, it's like a osmosis. We've all accepted it. And what you've just told me pisses me off, actually, because I thought there was going to be a real, not an embargo, but a real clampdown on the amount of television betting advertising. But for what you've just said, it's simply on the shirts. Well, that's not going to make any difference.
You know what it's like, though? You know what it's like? It's like, somebody who's an alcoholic and used to love, a bottle of scotch or something. It's like having little bottles of scotch all around the corner of the pitch and stuff like that on the front of shirts. You're just putting temptation in people's way the whole time, right?
But gamble responsibly.
It ain't finished, though, John, because what they're looking for now, a lot of clubs like ours, what they're looking into now are whether they can get cryptocurrency sponsors.
Right.
But it's the same. It's betting. It's still betting, right?
Well, cryptocurrency doubles the bet because you might get you might cash out and get a few percentage points of Bitcoin or an Ethereum or whatever. And you might think, oh look, I made a killing here. Two or 3 months later, when it sinks like a stone, it's worthless.
No, it's absolutely right. It's there's no morals with this stuff. I mean, it is purely business, and they don't understand. I mean, look, West Ham, we had a discussion on it last night in last night's show about kids and how much they care about kids and concessionary tickets. They don't really care. They don't really want kids there, unless they're paying for a full price ticket. They don't look at them as future punters, people who are going to get it in their blood and follow them around like we all do. This is they just take it with a pinch of salt, and it's the fact that it is big business, and we've all known it's been big business for some time. It's completely ruined. It's taken the soul away from football. Like that thing about maybe playing FIFA are going to agree that all league clubs can play up to one of their fixtures overseas per season. I mean, this is just madness.
Was it the Liverpool chairman earlier this week saying he expects one weekend at least for football, Premier League football, to be played globally, or
Well, that's where it's come from, right? It's come from the Americans, and there are a lot of
Yeah,
American
well, it would
owners.
come from the Americans, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I'll tell you
look,
what, though, leaving all this aside, as
yeah,
we sort of get on our moral hind legs, and rightly so, when it comes to betting, because there's no excuse for it.
no,
Um, you don't bite the hand that feeds you, and if Paqueta has done that, um, that's a hell of a mistake. I
yes,
just hope that there is no more to this than the coincidence, and I just hope that when he says that he's handed over everything, quote, that I can, I hope that that is sustainable as a fact, and that the FA accept that,
yeah,
because I still find it really, maybe I'm naive, but I still haven't heard any evidence, and I try to think as a lawyer as well as a rabid West Ham fan,
yeah.
but I still haven't heard any evidence that suggests it's any more than a coincidence, and I just
Mm.
hope that's the case. But what have you heard about Brazil then, before we
Well,
get sidetracked?
this is quite interesting. There is a guy. Let me just bring up the right article. 1 second. So this is around the CPI of sports betting. In Brazil.
What's a
Um,
CPI?
the CPI, I don't know what the letters actually stand for, but it is basically around public investigation. So it's probably the Council of Public Investigations or something. And the senator, uh, Jorge Kajuru, is the president of the CPI. So so he's actually a politician. As a senator, he's also president of the CPI. He will meet with other members of the commission today to make a decision on the Paqueta case. Now, whether that means today, they're going to make a decision today, or they're going to consider it today, but it actually reads they're going to make a decision today, right? And according to Kajuru, the meeting is scheduled to take place, blah, 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 blah. So speaking to a newspaper, he said, initially stated that Paqueta will be summoned by the CPI, but now he says he has to listen to the other colleagues and friends, right? Which is a bit of a strange thing to say. It goes on to say that that Lucas Paqueta was with the Brazilian national team over in the USA for the Copa America. But this Kajuru character, this is the one. He's got quite a lot of power. This bloke, right? And to give you an example of his power is that he once put a halt to the entire Brazilian league, right, while they were investigating a betting scandal. And he is the one who called for Lucas Paqueta, upon hearing this accusation, to be banned for life, right? Banned for life without seeing any evidence. I mean, this guy's already made up his mind before he's going in there, right?
Yeah, not exactly a paragon of virtue, I imagine, the Brazilian football authorities.
Well, they're not, because the
Far from it.
previous head of the Brazilian FA got it charged with fraud in
Yeah.
America, right? That's what it
Yeah.
was. So it's
That came out in the that was very well illustrated in that Netflix documentary about Sepp Blatter, wasn't it?
It was. We all knew
Yeah.
what Poison Sepp was up to, though, didn't we? We all knew what he was up to. And
So, Gary, this CPI, just
yeah,
so I understand it, is that something? Is that a criminal justice agency, or is it to do with the Brazilian Football Federation?
I don't know, actually. Let me just check. Let me just see if they're actually. So it says the CPI of sports betting is monitoring the case of Lucas Paqueta. I can't
Right.
find anywhere who they're affiliated to. I did have a
Sounds
look
like
earlier
some
today,
kind of
but
independent regulatory body then.
it does. And the fact that he's a senator as well, and the president of, so he's a politician as well. So that's what it sounds like.
Yeah, that does sound good.
Yeah, but either way, it sounds like he's already made up his mind, and he's going to speak with friends and colleagues about it this afternoon and make a decision. Now, what do they know that we don't here? And I think you said something quite pertinent. The muck that we've seen from from Brazilian, but in Brazil, the corruption, the levels of corruption,
Oh, right, yeah.
absolutely obscene, right?
Mm.
And you said something that was really interesting. It's like, from bent governing bodies pretending to be clean. What better way? What better way to make yourself look clean than to trash one of your star players?
Well, yeah. I mean, look, we don't know how clean or not the Brazilian football authorities are, but
Yeah,
a cynic might take the view that if they're announced, it will wish to announce to the world that they're squeaky clean. I mean, let's just put it this way: if there was a body that wasn't, let's just suppose
yeah.
there was a body that wasn't squeaky clean, and that had skeletons in the closet and wanted to perhaps divert the attention away from itself in terms of any form of inquiry into its day-to-day activities, what better way than to eviscerate the reputation of one of Brazilian's crown jewels, so to speak? I mean, I don't know. Again, we mustn't guess and get into
No,
conspiracy theories. But I didn't know any of this, and this sounds quite disturbing.
I think it is. It sounds like a kangaroo court. I'm not. Again, you can't judge it, but it sounds like, for a guy who's leading this to have come out before they've even had the inquiry, to come out right at the very beginning and get him booted out of the national team and call for, because that's what he did, right? He was the reason that he was kicked out of the Brazilian national team.
Are you saying this is the guy who's demanding Lucas Paqueta gets banned for
This is a
life?
guy who wanted to ban him for life.
Hmm.
Yeah, he actually publicly stated he wanted him banned for life, and that was when the Brazil coach booted Paqueta out of the Brazil team.
Well, I just hope that whatever goes on in Brazil, they adopt the same. Because one thing I will say is that whatever the FA are doing, they should have our backing, because they will do it properly.
Yeah,
Absolutely confident in that.
yeah. There's no way
Right.
the FA are going to be in any way influenced by the
No,
outcome of this
no,
so-called
no,
inquiry. No,
no, not at all.
right.
Not at all. It would have been better if if the Brazilians, whatever agency we're talking about here, just left well alone until the FA had completed their inquiry, because these relate to games in England in the Premier League.
I just wonder, what evidence they are seeing locally. Maybe they've got something the FA haven't. Who knows? It's a strange one. I've never heard of something like this going on before. Have you?
Unless of course it's simply, unless of course it's a lot simpler than this, and a lot less sinister, and it's just to decide whether, while the investigation is pending in England, it's appropriate for Lucas Paqueta to represent Brazil in the Copa America. It might. I mean, we don't really know what this is driving at, do we?
It could be. And if he gets found, if they clear him today, I might put a little picture of Senator Jorge Kajuru on my wall behind me, right? Because that might, that would show that he's not as dodgy as perhaps I'm thinking.
I'm just trying to work out what would have to make way, though, because you've got Bobby Moore in the World Cup, you've got both the 1975.
Oh no, it could go. It could go like a little picture of him down here would probably be all right. Just for now. Like where I was going to put Graham Souness when he was the only one that backed the fans a little while ago. Yeah. But this is so West Ham, isn't it, John? It's so West Ham. You look.
Could only help the West Ham, Gary.
Yeah, look back at XL Airways, where you had they went bust, and we had XL Airways painted all the way across the Chicken Runs stand, the roof, right?
And then they painted a black square on the players' shirts because they couldn't afford to get.
And then Alpari went bust, and that's when Betway came in. Actually, Alpari went bust, and Betway came in straight after them.
How long have we been sponsored by betting?
Well, if you count Alpari, it was probably since about 2009, 2010. It's been a long time.
Poor, isn't it?
Yeah,
I harken back to the days of Dr. Martens,
yeah.
but not back windows.
You don't want back on your front, no.
No,
That was
the worst. Imagine it was a window cleaning company or something.
Yeah,
The worst
it was.
the shirt was the worst shirt of all time. I'm sorry, but it was.
It was double glazing, wasn't it? It was double glazing company. But we that was when we found out our new star striker David Kelly had one leg longer than the other on the opening day of the season on the back page of the Sun.
Yeah.
You know, so we're
Not as
running
bad as
around with back on our front, and our strikers got legs different length.
Not as bad as Marco Bugas though, who
No,
lived in
no,
a caravan and went round the bend.
I wonder whatever happened to him.
He went back to live in a caravan, didn't he, in Holland?
Did he ever play football again? Was he an actual footballer? Because
I don't know.
he tried to kill someone at Man United, didn't he? And then he just disappeared. That's what it was. Yeah. And then I mean, just so many. I mean, just shambles after shambles. You know, the biscuit baron. We got the only bankrupt billionaire.
The Icelandic guy.
Yeah, the only guy that got jailed for fraud. Well, in fact, he was a convicted fraudster before he took over West Ham, Goodmanson. You know, because it wasn't Eggert Magnusson was actually just the CEO. He was a minority shareholder. Goodmanson was the boss. But yeah, so many things have done.
Talking about dodgy deals, I see Kaya Jarabchian. He still hasn't gone away, has he? The Tevez and the owner of Tevez and Mascherano. He's
yeah. That I honestly, we're going to have to go to Nigel's and see some of the stuff that he's got on the Tevez affair. It's very interesting, right? He was describing it to me over the phone one night. This is one reason why we must do that, because all is not as it seems. You know, there's a lot of stuff I didn't know that Nigel's got proof of. You know, but yeah, it's and that was Keir Jarabchian, who's the dodgiest bloke ever. You know, should never have done that deal. Should never have been allowed to do that deal.
Well, he should have been kicked out of football, but here he is offering players up for sale again, isn't he? He's still
the whole reason was, right, he thought he was going to take over West Ham. Had he signed West Ham, that problem would have gone away. He weren't allowed to sign to take over West Ham, so that problem became a big problem. Now that guy is an approved football agent, right? This is the kind of person that gets approved. I actually saw him. He nearly run me over outside of Upton Park. I saw his little bug eyes he's got. Yeah, bloody git.
Do you think he did that deliberately, Gary?
I think so. Him and who's the other one that tried to run me over? Daniel Levy when I went to corporate at Tottenham. Yeah, big Range Rover, little Daniel Levy.
It's becoming a bit of a habit.
I know. People are trying to slay me. First of all, Keir Jarabchian and then Daniel Levy. Two peas in a pod. What can I say?
Yeah.
But anyway, look, I think, John, that was a great chat. I think we're slowly getting through this. It's going to be interesting to see what comes out of Brazil today or tomorrow.
Yeah, I've got to say, I didn't know about this until you told me. So the viewers can rest assured this wasn't a setup, that we didn't sort of plan this. But I didn't know this was happening today, and I'm really concerned about, is it simply to decide whether or not he is allowed to wear the Brazilian shirt for the time being?
Let's hope so.
Is it something a whole lot darker? And I hope that whatever it is, I just hope they treat him fairly, because, as you said, maybe they know something the FA doesn't know.
Yeah, well, let's just hope there's nothing in it, and that Mr. Kajura, whatever his name is, I'll become a big fan of him going forward.
Well, he hasn't. He'll have to change his spots by the sound of it, if he's the one who's been calling for Paqueta's head on a platter 10 years back.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know what it is. I think he's done that for effect. He's trying to make a stand. This guy might be, you know, the broom that sweeps up the mess that is the corruption in Brazilian football, right? He might be the one. He might be the one that's doing. He might be straight as a die. You never know.
Well, I'm all for that, but not with if Paqueta is the fall guy on anything less than, unequivocal evidence.
Yes. then we take a completely different view of Jorge Kajuru. Yes. But anyway, thank you for joining me again, John. And thank you out there for watching. That was a great chat, actually. And we shall monitor the Paqueta situation as it evolves and update you accordingly. Again, I'm going to try and find out if that hearing is for the end of August, then that's when it's really going to get interesting. And in the meantime, we've got the Euros to look forward to.
Come on,
we've got a young Brazilian apparently having his medical today, haven't we? Another one.
Yeah, Guilherme. I think I got his name right from day one, actually. Guilherme.
I think you did. I
might be wrong. I don't know.
Yeah.
Guilherme. Who cares?
Gio on Hammer's chat said Guilherme. I think Guilherme because he's got to be.
Well, the L, I think the L is going to be silent. You see, so
that's what I'm thinking. Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. Yeah. Well, let's go. It could be the new rising superstar of next year, anyway. John, he's going to be the one to watch.
I think whatever happens with Lucas Paqueta, and let's hope that it does blow away. I feel quite confident and very excited, actually, about the season to come. But that's for you. That's for another chat later down the line.
Indeed. Anyway, thank you all for watching. Come on, your irons.